Hi, everybody. This is Tim Guy here talking about my action research on the flipped classroom's effectiveness and student attitudes. So just a little introduction about myself in case you don't remember me. My name is Tim Guy. I am a part of the STEM Masters program here at Millersville, and I teach 8th grade math at Spring Grove Middle School in the Spring Grove Area School District in York County. The purpose of my research, I honestly just wanted to figure out how effective the flipped classroom is. At my school, a lot of different teachers are trying it out. We are a one-to-one school district, so all our students have iPads, and so it's kind of the next logical step to start looking at some of these more exploratory classroom styles to see how they work and how the good they are for the students. And honestly, I'm always looking for new ways to improve student achievement. I always want to reach some of my students who aren't achieving as well as I'd like them to, and just try out new things to see how well they work and what I can do to make them better. So my research question going into this action research is, how will student achievement on formative assessments change when students are engaging in a flipped classroom? The background research, so just a little quick overview of my lit review, there really were 5 main articles I kind of looked at when I went ahead and did this action research. The first one is from a Malek Jidatawi. I'm sure I did not say that name correctly, but please forgive me. The year 2019. So his study that he went out and he wanted to look and see how flipped classrooms can affect student self-regulation. So basically, one of the big myths out there, or not really myth, one of the things that people always say about flipped classrooms are that they helped improve student independence and student independent working strategies. So basically, student study skills improve, their independent learning abilities improve, and those were some of the things that he was looking to see is, did that actually happen? And through his study, he actually showed that the students did improve in some of those independent work habits and some of those things that we look for in good teaching styles, things that people say happens in the flipped classroom. The next study was by Alsakak and Ozdemir in 2018. They wanted to see if the flipped classroom did improve learning outcomes. So doing a flipped classroom, does it actually make students improve on whatever they're learning? And what they found was that the student learning outcomes did improve by doing the flipped classroom. The one thing that they did show, however, was that they didn't see any improvement in some of those student self-directed abilities, some of those things that in the previous study, Jidatawi said that he did find in those. So, well, interesting, there was a little bit of disconnect between those two studies. Some of the other studies I looked at, Cabby in 2018, he did a study to see how effective the flipped classroom is in comparison to the traditional classroom. So a little bit different than the previous study in that this was more of a comparison between, all right, if I have a flipped classroom and a classroom taught traditionally, which one is going to do better? And what he found was that both classrooms improved. However, there was little difference between the amount of improvement with the flipped classroom and the traditional classroom. The next one was from Yildirim in 2017. This study was to see the students' opinions on the flipped classroom and then kind of compare those opinions to see, all right, if these are what students think about a flipped classroom, how do they think about traditional classroom, and is there a improvement or a difference there? And what they found was that the students really did like the flipped classroom. They had a very high opinion of it. In fact, they preferred it to the traditional classroom. They liked a lot of the independence they were given. They liked the way that the in-class sessions were run and that they got to do more hands-on activities, they felt like, while they were doing this flipped classroom. And so that kind of made them really enjoy the flipped classroom and want to engage in it. And then the last study was from Lowe and Hugh in 2017, and they kind of almost, their study almost kind of piggybacks on Yildirim's in that they want to see what are the things that actually make students like flipped classrooms more than other flipped classrooms. So basically, what are the things that improve those student opinions on what they're learning in the flipped classroom? And they found that the things that were involved in the first principle of instruction were the ones that made students really like the flipped classroom more than some of the other stuff that could go on. Basically, those first principles of instruction are tying your instruction to real world scenarios and having some of those real problems, hands-on problems, or just real connections for students. Those are the kind of things that made students really like the flipped classroom over some other ways of learning. So the design of my lesson when I went to, or design of my action research when I went to go ahead and do this, basically I have 2 different pre-algebra classes that I teach, so I decided to assign them each a different learning style. One did the flipped classroom while another did the traditional classroom. The flipped classroom, they did theirs using Nearpod. So that is a app you can use on your iPads that is almost set up kind of like a digital slideshow sort of thing where you can put in videos for students to watch, you can put in questions for them to answer that they can interact with, and then I would get feedback from them immediately after they're doing it so I could keep track of who was doing the videos and also who was understanding what was going on as we went along. Another thing, the one main way that I got about getting my data was by doing a pre-test and a post-test. The pre-test and post-test were exactly the same. That way I could really compare how well they were improving, and that was given to both groups. Additionally, I also collected warm-up and conclusion data in addition to those Nearpod questions. This was more for some anecdotal evidence to kind of support the things I was seeing through the pre-test and the post-test. That was my main source of quantitative data that I was going to be looking at. And then my main things that I was looking for was how well the students were improving with each group, and then also the student participation in the videos and the lessons for the flipped classroom if they were actually doing them. So some of the results and findings that I had, the first thing I want to look at was just the student participation in the flipped classrooms. Basically, how much were they engaging in doing these lessons as we went along. And what I saw was that as I was going along, the students started to drop off in terms of how many were doing the lesson when it was assigned. So the first 3 lessons, 100% students did them. Everybody was involved and everybody did them. By the last lesson, I only had 77% of my students fully participating. And what that means is that the day that it would have been due, like the next day, those students were coming in with it completed. So students that would come in who did not have it completed, they would have to complete the video assignment before they did what we were doing in class. So this is the students who came in with it fully done. And that's almost a quarter of students were not doing these lessons by the time we got to the end, and that's a big problem. That's a huge portion of the population who is doing the flipped classroom, and I think it might explain some of the other results that I found when I did this study, because when I looked at student achievement, yes, the flipped classroom was effective in terms of increasing student achievement. So in terms of the average score from the pre-test to post-test, you can see that sort of in the chart over to the right. This was just straight up how many questions they got right on that pre-test to post-test, and the average increase, the flipped classroom improved 55%, while the traditional improved 59%. Now, that 4% is really not a big difference. In fact, it's pretty negligible, meaning that both classrooms kind of perform the same in terms of the average increase. In fact, I actually ran a t-test, and the t-test shows that we do not have any sort of confidence that these increases are different, meaning that it's more than likely that they did about the same. They're about the same amount of improvement. Now, that's not a bad thing. So seeing that the flipped classroom, it does show student achievement. It does improve how students were doing in terms of going from the pre-test to the post-test. The big difference is that it's about the same as a traditional classroom. But that's okay, because the traditional classroom, it shows that the flipped classroom is not hurting students in how they're performing, okay? The flipped classroom is something that is effective for students, and, again, this is my first time doing a flipped classroom, so seeing that it performed about the same as something that I've been doing for a lot of years is kind of encouraging, in that I can go in and try to change some things and maybe even make it better. But at the very least, I know that the flipped classroom is not hurting my students. And honestly, the big thing that I want to change as I go forward, as I try more of these flipped classroom things, is how to get that student participation to stay consistent and steady at 100% the whole way through. I think that was a big problem with my data. I had small population sizes, so just having a few students not participating can really affect what my data looked like in the end. So I think it's really important to kind of figure out, how do I get these students to stay engaged and keep them participating? And honestly, that's something that I think us as a school are going to have to keep trying and implementing as we go. A lot of teachers are trying these flipped classrooms, and I'm really looking forward to meeting with them and talking to other teachers who are trying this to see what are some strategies that they use to keep kids participating, or if they have that same problem, maybe we can brainstorm together and kind of improve on what this flipped classroom looks like. But honestly, I found this action research more encouraging than discouraging, The flipped classroom performs about the same as a traditional classroom, but that's with not a lot of experience and this student participation problem. So I think that we can really improve on it and kind of get to show that the flipped classroom can be really effective for our students. Thank you for watching.